talk about that today, but we got into pigs and now we got to get them outside. So they go out at about 100 pounds, 75 to 100 pounds is when we first take them out to the pig pastures. We give them a bulk feeder as well. That keeps them close, so even if a pig gets out from time to time, they don't go very far because they're coming back to that cell feeder. And we move them on about a 10-day to 2-week rotation. It's really critical to have enough space for pigs so that you have a long enough rotation. We use 2-strand electric fence. You can see the graze line, paddock line there to contain them. We use you see him holding a wooden gate there, and that's really critical for moving them. Pigs are very smart. They train very quickly to electric fence. However, they don't like crossing where the electric fence was. So if you use a physical, visible barrier instead of a psychological barrier for the gates themselves, you open up that gate, pig moving becomes very, very low stress for you and the pig. Well, a lot of you have pig moving stories, so the pigs move really well when you have a visible barrier. Okay, so they move into fresh grass, keeping them tall. We use it to transform freshly cut over areas into beautiful pastures. That's where they graze underneath, having a silvopasture, an open cutting in. You have trees and grass, if you will, grass growing up right underneath trees. There's an example of kind of a savanna silvopasture idea of the grass growing. An amazing thing is we don't plant any of this seed. We've never planted a seed in over 50 years. We just, in this case, we did a selective cut and a kind of a clear cut. We let some of the good trees begin to grow back and started rotating the pigs. And the pigs just, because of their tillage and enough rest so that the grass has a chance to grow back. Again, leaving pigs in the same spot for weeks on end creates a moonscape. That's not what we're looking for. That's not a pastured pig. A pig going onto grass like this is a pastured pig. And that's what keeps them going. It turns them into a rose pork and all of that. So we use the 2-strand electric fence for containment and can move them on a regular 10-day to 2-week basis. Then if you want to move them into the woods, this is the acorn finishing, the acorn glen idea. And we move them into the trees themselves to actually harvest the nuts and acorns in the trees. This time of year you got a lot of acorns and nuts falling, so this is where we actually put them into. Virginia and North Carolina and probably parts of Pennsylvania became really popular for their Virginia hams. And they became very popular because farmers would turn their pigs out in the mountains and they would go self-harvest all these acorns, very much like what they do in Europe, and would have all this exercise going up and down all these hills all the time, become very toned and very muscled. And because they're picking up all those nuts, it creates a really distinct flavor. So that's what we're trying to duplicate here as well. In this case, we just use nylon rope as our insulator and run this 12.5 gauge aluminum wire through the trees to create the paddocks. And then we just put the pigs directly in, and we give them a lot bigger paddocks, maybe 2 to 3 acres, and they can range out over those 2 to 3 acres, harvesting the mass that's falling underneath the trees. They don't hurt the trees at all. They actually are encouraging to the trees, cutting out some of the underbrush that is taking nutrients and water and stuff from the larger trees. They're also cleaning up around the crowns of the trees and making them healthier. And you can just tell the pigs are a lot more happy in the grass outside than being inside. Another thing that we can do is farrow pigs outside. My brother-in-law and one of our past apprentices also is farrowing pigs right outside in the pasture. So that's a young wean, about ready to be weaned pig, and he actually uses the netting. He would actually farrow in a small space. The pigs would be able to, the sows would go in, have a place to make a nest and whatever, and then come right out and move them. You can see he's using the netting as well, the premier netting to keep the pigs in, and he would just move the piglets along, and the piglets would follow the sows and be able to farrow right on the pasture as well. And then they can begin getting used to the electric fence and eating and stuff, and then when they get weaned, they can go right into the system, the 2-strand electric system, after they're weaned. We can raise, I started out with rabbits. That's why I really got involved in farming when I was young, is raising rabbits. This is an example of the hairpin.